The transport ship touched down on Talos 7 just before dawn, stepped onto the landing platform and felt the dry wind against his chitinous skin. His 4 eyes scanned the colony with practiced efficiency. Small, dusty, unimpressive. This was supposed to be an important human outpost. It looked more like a collection of prefabricated boxes scattered across red dirt. He adjusted the recording device on his thorax. The Galactic Coalition had sent him here for one reason: to observe humans in combat. Reports from the frontier had been troubling. Humans fought differently than other species. They made choices that logic. They won battles they should have lost. The Council wanted to know if humans were a military asset or a liability. Species, though, had perfected warfare over 10,000 years. Every battle was mathematics. Every decision was probability. They never lost because they never fought battles they couldn't win. Looking at this dusty colony, he suspected humans simply hadn't learned this basic truth yet. "You must be our observer." A human approached, hand extended. He wore a uniform that looked lived-in, comfortable. His face showed smile lines around the eyes. This was Captain, according to briefing files. "I am Military Analyst Defense Corps," he said, carefully taking the human's hand. The handshake was firm, warm, strange custom. "Welcome to Talos 7, said, leading him toward the main compound. "Hope you don't mind dust. We've got plenty of it." The compound was busy. Humans moved between buildings, carrying supplies, maintaining equipment. Noticed their behavior immediately. They talked loudly. They laughed. Some played music from portable speakers. One group was kicking a ball around during what should have been duty hours. "Your troops lack discipline," observed. Laughed. "They're on a 15-minute break. Even soldiers need to breathe." This was already concerning. Troops maintained readiness at all times. There were no breaks during duty cycles. Inside the command center met more humans. Sergeant Minu, a man with gray in his hair and scars on his hands. Private, young, maybe 22 years old, who smiled at him like they were old friends. Corporal, who was eating something and offered a bite. Dried mango, explained. "Want some?" "I do not consume plant matter," said. "More for me then," grinned. These were soldiers. They acted like. Didn't have a comparison. Soldiers were serious, focused, efficient. These humans seemed almost casual about warfare. "How many troops defend this colony?" asked. 40, said, "plus civilian volunteers if things get ugly." 40? The colony housed 12,000 civilians from 6 different species. 40 soldiers to defend them all. His estimation of human military competence dropped further. He spent the morning observing training exercises. The humans were competent enough with their weapons. Their marksmanship was acceptable. Their tactics were standard. Nothing impressive, but nothing terrible either. Just average. Then the alarm started screaming. His antennae snapped to attention. That sound meant one thing: incoming hostiles. He rushed to the command center where screens showed space above the planet. His blood went cold. Ravagers. 3 hive ships had just entered the system. The screens calculated numbers: 2,143 hostiles, against 40 humans and a handful of civilian security forces. "Everyone not essential, start evacuation procedures," said calmly, like he was ordering lunch. "Standard protocol. Civilians first, starting with the young and injured." "Captain," said carefully, "the logical course of action is immediate full evacuation, including military personnel." Looked at him with those strange human eyes. Brown, warm, alive. "Who's going to cover the evacuation?" "The Ravagers will not allow." "Exactly, they won't allow anything, so we need to make them too busy to chase the evacuation ships." Turned to his troops. "Minu, I want firing positions at grid points 7, 12, and 19. Get creative with the mining charges. Set up medical in the reinforced bunker. Everyone else, you know the drill." The humans moved, not rushed, not panicked. They moved like this was just another day. Watched check medical supplies while humming a song. She caught him staring. "First time seeing Ravagers?" she asked. "No, I have observed 17 Ravager engagements." "Then you know what's coming." She smiled, but he could see her hands shaking slightly as she organized bandages. "Scary, right?" "Your survival probability is 0.003%, said. He believed in honesty. "Yeah, the math sucks." She loaded a pistol and tucked it into her belt. "But math isn't everything. Mathematics is the foundation of all warfare." "Maybe for you guys." She zipped up her medical kit. "Humans are bad at math. We're better at the impossible stuff." Before could ask what that meant, the first drop pods hit. He watched the screens as Ravagers poured out. Creatures of muscle and claw and hunger. 300 in the first wave, heading straight for the colony. Captain stood in the command center, watching the enemy advance. Waited for the defensive position's command. Any competent commander would fortify, create kill zones, maximize defensive advantages. All units said into the comm, "Fix bayonets." Translator must have malfunctioned. "Fix bayonets." "You heard me." Picked up his rifle, checked it, and attached a long blade to the end. Around the compound, other humans did the same. "We're going to meet them." "You cannot be serious." A defensive position would let them set the pace, control the engagement, pin us down. Headed for the door. "I prefer to make the first impression." Followed him outside. 40 humans stood in a loose formation. They looked so small. The Ravagers were already visible on the horizon, a dark mass moving like a wave. "This is suicide," said. "Probably," raised his rifle. "But we've got 4,000 civilians who need 12 more hours to evacuate, so we're going to give them 12 hours. The mathematics." "Screw the mathematics." It was Minu who spoke, checking his weapon. "We're human, we don't quit." The order came, simple, direct, insane. "Forward!" And watched as 40 humans began to run toward 300 Ravagers, screaming as they went. They weren't marching. They weren't advancing tactically. They were charging like something out of ancient history, before civilization, before logic. He expected to witness a slaughter. He expected to record the final moments of 40 brave but foolish humans. What he saw instead would change everything he thought he knew about warfare. The humans crashed into the Ravager line like a hammer. There was no elegance, no sophisticated tactics, just fury and steel and humans who refused to stop. Watched drive his bayonet through a Ravager's throat, then use his rifle as a club. He watched the smiling medic shoot a creature in the face without hesitation. And he watched the Ravagers falter. These were creatures that had destroyed civilizations. They didn't feel fear. They didn't retreat. But they had never faced humans before. The first wave broke. The Ravagers pulled back, confused, reorganizing. The humans held the ground, breathing hard, bleeding, but standing. His analytical mind couldn't process what he'd just witnessed. It every principle of warfare he'd ever studied. Captain walked past him, reloading his rifle. There was blood on his uniform. He was grinning. "Welcome to Taylor 7, he said. "It's going to be a long day." Stood in the dust and the smoke and understood one thing clearly. He had severely underestimated these humans, and he needed to understand why they fought like this. Because if he didn't, the universe would never be ready for what humanity truly was. The night between the first and second wave was strange. Expected the humans to be somber, preparing for death. Instead, they sat around portable heaters, eating rations and telling stories. Someone had a guitar. Music drifted across the compound while overhead, the Ravager ships circled like predators. "Doesn't make sense," Sergeant Minu said, noticing confusion. The older human sat on an ammunition crate, cleaning his rifle. "We should be scared silent, right?" "Yes. Fear response in most species causes withdrawal, quietness, energy conservation." We are scared. Minyu held up his hand. It trembled slightly. See, shaking like a leaf. But humans learned a long time ago that fear is just another thing we carry. Doesn't mean we have to let it drive. Private, the communications officer, walked past carrying coffee. She stopped and offered a cup. When he declined, she shrugged and drank it herself. Evacuation status, Minyu asked her. 60% complete. Ships are loading civilians as fast as they can. We need 8 more hours, maybe 10. We'll get them 10. Minyu said it like it was a fact, not a hope. Pulled up his tactical display. The numbers were worse than before. The Ravagers had landed more forces. Current count, 1,800 hostiles, against 37 humans now after 3 casualties from the first wave. Sergeant Minyu, I must speak plainly. Tactical doctrine is clear in these situations. When outnumbered 50 to 1, retreat is the only logical option. We're not. Minyu reassembled his rifle with practiced movements. And logic isn't everything. Logic is the foundation of survival. No, Minyu looked at him with eyes that had seen too much war. Survival is the foundation of survival, and humans survive by refusing to quit. Captain approached, his chest bandaged from a wound he'd taken in the first fight. He shouldn't even be standing, but here he was, walking the perimeter, checking on his troops. Captain, you should be in medical, said. Said the same thing. I ignored her too, sat down carefully, wincing. How's your report coming? I have collected significant data, though I do not understand most of it. What don't you understand? Why you fight when victory is impossible. Was quiet for a moment. You see those people loading onto the evacuation ships? He pointed toward the landing pad where civilians hurried aboard. There's a kid there, maybe 8 years old. Knows my name because I helped him find his lost toy last month. There's an elderly couple who run the best restaurant in the colony. There's our pilot who tells terrible jokes. I do not see the relevance. Those people trust us to protect them, not because we're the strongest because we're the ones who stayed, stood up slowly. In human culture, there's an old idea that the measure of someone isn't what they do when they'll win, it's what they do when they'll lose. The alarms interrupted them. The second wave was coming. This time, positioned himself with the command unit. He needed to see how humans operated under sustained assault. What he witnessed over the next 6 hours broke every rule in his tactical database. The Ravagers came in force, 500 in the first push. Didn't order a charge this time. Instead, he set up defensive positions, creating crossfire zones. Standard tactics finally thought. Then he saw what Corporal had done. The demolitions expert had taken mining equipment, fusion cells, and what looked like civilian electronics and created improvised explosive devices scattered across the approach routes. They weren't military grade. They weren't even safe. Those could explode prematurely, observed. Yeah, said cheerfully, arming another device. Could also take out 20 Ravagers each, worth the risk. But you could die. Buddy, I'm already probably gonna die. Might as well make it count. The Ravagers hit the first minefield. Explosions ripped through their ranks. The humans opened fire from defensive positions. For a moment, thought they might hold with minimal casualties. Then the Ravagers adapted. They split into 3 groups flanking the human positions, a textbook maneuver, one that should have broken the defense. Private's medical station was in the path of one flanking group. She had 2 wounded humans with her, expected her to call for retreat to evacuate her patients. Instead, she picked up a rifle. I'm a medic, she said to the wounded, but I was a soldier first. She held that position alone for 8 minutes, 8 minutes against 40 Ravagers. She killed 11 before reinforcements arrived. When reviewed the footage later, he saw her hands shaking the entire time. She was terrified, but she didn't move. The battle raged for hours. Humans fell, watched them die in ways that made no sense. A soldier named stayed at his heavy weapon even after taking a wound that should have sent him to medical. He fired until he passed out from blood loss. A woman named held a corridor alone, knife in hand when her ammunition ran out, just to buy 30 seconds for her squad to reposition. By dawn, the humans were down to 31 effective fighters. They'd killed over 600 Ravagers. The mathematics still said they should all be dead. The mathematics didn't account for human stubbornness. Found Captain in the command center. The man looked exhausted, but his eyes were still sharp. "Why do you not retreat?" asked. "You have bought time. The civilians could evacuate now with minimal risk." "Still need 4 more hours for a full evacuation," studied the tactical display. "And the Ravagers have more ships in orbit. If we run, they'll chase the civilian vessels. Can't let that happen." "So you will die here." "Probably," took a drink of water, "but that's not really the point." "Then what is the point?" "The point is that those people get home. The point is that we did everything we could. The point is," paused, searching for words. "The point is that being human means standing between the innocent and the monsters, even when the monsters are stronger." A new alarm. More drop pods checked the sensors. 1,200 Ravagers, coming all at once. This was it, the final assault. There was no possible way 31 humans could hold against that number. "Stood up, all units prepare for close quarters combat. How many surprises you got left?" "3 big ones, Captain." "Make them count." "Mean you, I want a fighting retreat pattern. We give ground slowly, make them pay for every meter. Prep for mass casualties." Watched them prepare. They were checking weapons, writing quick messages on paper, saying things to each other that looked like goodbyes. But they weren't crying. They weren't giving up. Private caught his stare. "You look confused." "I am. You are about to die. You know this. Yet you prepare as if you might survive." "We might," she said. "Humans have survived worse." "Mathematics says." "Math says we should have been extinct 1,000,000 years ago," smiled. "We lived through ice ages with nothing but sharp sticks and attitude. We crossed oceans on wooden boats. We went to space in tin cans that barely worked. Math said it was all impossible. We did it anyway." The Ravagers appeared on the horizon. A dark wave of claws and hunger, more than had ever seen in one place. "Here they come," shouted. "Hold the line, for the civilians, for each other, for anyone who ever believed we could." The humans raised their weapons. 31 people against 1,200 monsters. Activated all his recording equipment. If nothing else, the galaxy needed to see this, needed to understand what humans truly were. The Ravagers charged. The humans opened fire, and watched as something impossible began to unfold. The world became fire and screaming. Had witnessed battles before, but nothing like this. The Ravagers came like a tsunami of claws and teeth. The humans met them with bullets and blades and something else. Something species didn't have a word for. First improvised mine detonated when the Ravagers hit the outer perimeter. The explosion was massive, far larger than it should have been. Instruments registered readings that made no sense. The human had somehow jury-rigged mining fusion cells to create a blast equivalent to military-grade ordnance. "That's not possible," said to himself. "Humans don't care about possible," Sergeant Menu said, firing controlled bursts into the advancing horde. "We care about necessary." The defensive line bent. The humans gave ground exactly as had ordered, a controlled retreat that forced the Ravagers into kill zones. But there were so many. For every one that fell, 3 more took its place. Watched a human named Corporal on one of the observation towers. The sniper was methodical, each shot dropping a Ravager. Then saw the tower shake. A Ravager climber had reached the base, tearing at the supports. "Evacuate your position," his voice came over the radio. "Negative, Captain. I've got the best sight lines from here." The tower shuddered again. Metal screamed. calculated the structure would collapse in approximately 90 seconds. "That's an order, Corporal." "Respectfully, sir, I can do more good here." Kept firing. "I can see their command cluster from this angle. Take them out, the rest will be disorganized." Watched in horror as the tower supports began to fail. Had to know, had to see the metal breaking, yet the human kept shooting. 80 seconds. Rifle cracked again. A Ravager leader fell. 60 seconds. Another shot, another leader down. 40 seconds. The tower tilted, braced himself, adjusted his aim, fired. 20 seconds. "Jump now," it was voice desperate. "After this shot," said calmly. 10 seconds. The shot rang out. The last Ravager commander in the visible cluster dropped. 5 seconds. Jumped. The tower collapsed behind him, crushing 3 Ravagers that had been climbing it. Hit the ground hard, his leg twisting at an angle that made stomach turn. The human screamed but immediately started crawling toward cover, dragging his rifle with him. Medics reached him. They tried to pull him to safety, fought them. "My rifle, get my rifle." "Your leg is broken in 3 places," one medic said. "Then prop me up somewhere and give me ammunition. I can still shoot." They did. Watched them set against a reinforced wall, splint his leg with whatever they could find and hand him magazines. The human kept firing, his face twisted in pain, sweat pouring down his face, but he never stopped. "Why?" Approached him during a brief lull. "You could go to medical, rest, survive." Looked at him with eyes that were bright with pain. "You see those people down there?" He pointed to where other humans fought. "That's. He pulled me out of a crashed transport 2 years ago. That's. She stayed up all night when my mother died just so I wouldn't be alone. That's she." His voice caught. "She's the best person I know." "They are your companions." "They're my family," reloaded. "And you don't abandon family, ever." The battle raged on. The second of improvised bombs detonated, taking out a cluster of Ravagers that had broken through the eastern perimeter. The explosion was so close to human positions that was certain some of them must have died in the blast. Instead, he heard laughter on the radio. "You maniac, you almost took us out too." "Almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades." His voice was cheerful despite the chaos. "What are horseshoes?" someone asked. "No idea. It's something my grandpa used to say." They were laughing. In the middle of a battle they were losing, laughing. A new sound cut through the noise. Engines. Looked up to see a human fighter craft streaking overhead. That was the pilot. She was providing air support, strafing Ravager positions with precision fire. Then he saw the smoke trailing from her engines. "Your starboard engine is failing." His voice came over the command channel. "I noticed." Her voice was tight. "I can make it back to base." "Negative, land now, that's an order." "Captain, there's a Ravager cluster forming at grid point 23. 60, maybe 70 of them. They're about to overrun Minu's position." "Land your craft, Lieutenant." "Sir, I've got enough power for one more run, just one." Pulled up the tactical display. She was right. The cluster was forming, preparing to surge forward. If they hit Minu's position, the entire defensive line would collapse. The evacuation would fail. I started. "Tell my brother I'm sorry about the poker debt." Fighter turned, diving toward the Ravager cluster, "and tell him I love him." Watched the fighter accelerate, wasn't strafing. She was diving straight at them. "Pull up, that's an order." "Can't hear you, sir. Must be radio interference." Her voice was calm, almost peaceful. "Been an honor serving with you all." The fighter plunged into the Ravager cluster. At the last second, saw something eject from the cockpit. Then the ship exploded, taking 63 Ravagers with it. The ejection seat crashed into the ground 200 meters away. Humans sprinted toward it under heavy fire. They reached, pulled her from the wreckage. She was alive, grinning despite the burns on her face. Got 'em, she said before passing out. The humans cheered. They were down to 28 effective combatants. They'd lost ground, lost blood, lost friends. And they were cheering because one of them had survived a suicide run. His mind struggled to process it. Every instinct, every tactical algorithm, every piece of military doctrine said these humans should have broken hours ago, should have surrendered, should have fled. Instead, they fought harder. He watched Private move between wounded soldiers. She'd run out of proper medical supplies and was using torn cloth as bandages, civilian painkillers as anesthetics. Her medical kit was empty, but she kept working. "How many wounded can you save?" asked her. She looked up, exhausted. Her young face was streaked with blood and dirt. "All of them. I'll save all of them." "That is not statistically possible." "Then I guess I'll break statistics." She went back to work. The Ravagers launched another assault. The humans met them with fire and fury. Saw detonate his last improvised bomb, the explosion so large it created a crater 20 meters wide. He saw Minyu hold alone for 5 minutes, his rifle burning hot from continuous firing. He saw coordinate movements with nothing but a radio and determination. And he saw them falling. One by one, humans went down, some got back up, some didn't. 28 became 25. 25 became 23. The mathematics were inevitable. The outcome was certain. But the humans kept fighting. Captain's voice came over the all-hands channel. "Evacuation status." 95% complete, reported. 2 more hours and everyone's out. "Then we hold for 2 more hours," reloaded his rifle. "We've come this far, we finished the job." Looked at the tactical display. 23 humans against 900 Ravagers. The math was simple, brutal, absolute. But as he watched these humans prepare for another wave, as he saw them check weapons with shaking hands, as he heard them joke and encourage each other despite their terror, began to understand something profound. Humans didn't fight based on mathematics. They fought based on something his species had lost ago, if they'd ever had it at all. They fought based on will. And human will, he was learning, was a force that broke all equations. The sun was setting when Captain fell, saw it happen. A Ravager had broken through the perimeter faster than the others, turned to engage, but he was tired. They were all tired. The creature's claws caught him across the chest, throwing him backward. 3 humans killed the Ravager immediately. Was there in seconds, her hands moving quickly over wounds. "How bad?" Sergeant Minyu asked, kneeling beside them. "Bad enough. Plasma burns, deep lacerations. He needs proper medical care." His voice was steady, but her eyes were afraid. "He's out of the fight." "No," tried to sit up. Blood soaked through the bandages was applying. "I can still." "You can still command," Minyu said firmly. "From the medical station, I'll take field command." "Minyu." "That's not a request, Captain. You taught us well. We know what to do." Minyu stood, checking his rifle. "We'll finish this." They moved to the bunker that served as their medical facility. Followed. Inside, 11 wounded humans lay on makeshift beds. Some would live, some wouldn't. All of them still had weapons within reach. Tried to stand twice before physically pushed him down. "Captain, I need you to shut up and lie still," she said. "Sir." Despite everything, smiled. "That's insubordination, Private. Court-martial me later. Right now, I'm your doctor." She hooked him up to a monitor cobbled together from mining equipment and medical sensors. "You can command from here, but you move again and I'll sedate you." Watched accept this. A commander would never allow such disrespect, but the captain just nodded and reached for the radio. "Minyu status. 22 active fighters. Ammunition at 30%, spirits high." There was the sound of gunfire in the background. "Ravagers are regrouping. Looks like they're preparing something big." "How big?" A pause. "All of them, sir. They're committing everything." Pulled up his scanner. Minyu was right. Every remaining Ravager, approximately 900 creatures, was forming up for a final massive assault. It was a sound tactic. Overwhelming force, single thrust, break the defenders completely. Against 22 humans. The mathematics were beyond impossible now. They were absurd. "Evacuation status?" asked. His voice crackled through. "Last ship is loading now. 90 minutes and everyone's off-world." 90 minutes, closed his eyes. "We can do 90 minutes. Sir," Minyu's voice was quiet. "The Ravagers are going to hit us with everything. We can't hold the perimeter. There's too many." "Then we change tactics." "Sir." Opened his eyes, saw something in them, not hope. Humans seemed to fight without needing hope. It was something else. Determination. Pure, absolute determination. "The evacuation ships are vulnerable during launch. The Ravagers have ships in orbit. If they get past us, they'll chase down those civilian vessels." His voice grew stronger despite his wounds. "So we make sure they can't chase anyone." "How?" "We go to them. Take out their command cluster. Without coordination, they'll be disorganized long enough for the evacuation to complete." Silence on the radio, then Minyu spoke. "That's a suicide run, Captain." "I know." "Then I'm leading it. You're injured." "Minyu." "Not asking permission, sir." Minyu's voice was firm. "You've led us this far, let us finish it." Another voice joined. "I'm in." "Me too," still propped against his wall. "Count me in." One by one, every able-bodied human volunteered. Even some of the wounded tried to join. Watchd's face as he listened to his people choose certain death. "I need 10, Minyu said finally. "Fast runners. The rest hold the perimeter, protect the evacuation point." "I volunteer," said. Every human in the medical bunker turned to look at her. The young medic who smiled at everyone, who'd spent days saving lives, who'd never wanted to be a soldier. "No," said, "you're needed here. The wounded are stable, and you need every gun you can get." She checked her pistol, reloaded it. "Besides, someone needs to patch you guys up when you do something stupid." "When not if?" Minyu asked. "You're humans, stupid is guaranteed." She smiled but could see her hands shaking. Stepped forward. "This is insanity. A suicide charge will accomplish nothing." "It'll buy time," Minyu said. "And time is what those civilians need." "You will all die." "Probably." Minyu gathered the volunteers. 10 humans who knew they wouldn't come back. "But that's not new information. We've been dying all day. Might as well make it count." Looked at these humans, exhausted, wounded, terrified, and volunteering for certain death, for people they'd never met, for civilians of species they barely knew. "Why?" he asked. "Why do you do this?" It was who answered. "Because if we don't, who will? Because those people trust us. Because—" she struggled to find words. "Because that's what it means to be human. We stand between the darkness and the light even when the darkness is stronger." Minyu's team assembled. They took all the remaining ammunition, the few grenades left, and said their goodbyes. Quick hugs. Promises to meet again wherever dead soldiers go. Made a joke that wasn't funny but made everyone laugh anyway. "Remember," said from his bed, "you're buying 90 minutes. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and don't stop moving." "Yes, sir," Minyu saluted. Then he turned to his team. "Ready." They nodded, saw the fear in their eyes. They weren't fearless. They were terrified, but they were going anyway. The team left the bunker, pulled up his displays, tracking them. They moved fast, using the remaining cover, heading straight for the Ravager command cluster a kilometer away. The Ravagers saw them coming. Hundreds of creatures turned toward this small group of humans sprinting toward certain death. Minyu's team opened fire. Their weapons blazed, cutting down Ravagers. They threw grenades. They kept running, never stopping, always moving forward. The Ravagers surrounded them. Watch go down first, still firing, then a human named, then another. But they reached the command cluster. Minyu and 4 others, including, crashed into the Ravager commanders. It was chaos, blades and claws and desperation. Sensors showed the Ravager coordination faltering. The command structure was breaking. The massive assault force began to fragment, units acting independently instead of as one coordinated wave. But the cost? He watched Minyu fight 3 Ravagers at once, his rifle empty, using it as a club. He watched shoot a commander point-blank, then get thrown 10 meters by another. He watched humans die for strangers. Then something changed in the sensor readings. The Ravager Hive ships in orbit were moving, not toward the planet, away from it. "They're retreating," his voice came over the radio, disbelieving. "The Hive ships are jumping too." Without their command structure, without their ships, the remaining Ravagers on the ground began to scatter. Some fought on. Most fled into the wilderness. At the command cluster, 2 humans still stood. Minyu, covered in blood, and leaning against a broken pillar, her medical kit somehow still strapped to her back. "Status," his voice was weak. "Mission accomplished," Minyu said. "Ravagers are broken. 8 KIA from the assault team." The medics rushed out to retrieve the survivors, went with them. He found trying to bandage her own wounds. "I'm fine," she said. "Check the others first." She wasn't fine. She could barely stand, but she was still trying to help others. "Why did you volunteer?" asked her. Looked at him with eyes that had seen too much death for someone so young. "Because makes me laugh, because taught me to shoot, because Minyu is like a father to me, because all those people on those ships deserve to go home." She smiled weakly. "Because I'm human, and humans don't quit." The last evacuation ship launched as the sun finally set. Watched it climb into the sky, carrying 12,000 civilians to safety. The price, 18 human lives. 22 humans remained, most wounded. By every calculation, they should have all died. The battle should have been over in the first hour. But humans didn't follow calculations. And standing in the ruins of Talos 7, finally understood why the universe should fear them. 3 days after the battle, stood in the ruins of Talos 7 and tried to write his report. Words failed him. How could he explain what he'd witnessed? How could he make the Galactic Coalition understand? Around him, the humans were already rebuilding. 17 had survived, 17 out of 40. They moved slowly, favoring injuries, but they moved. They cleared rubble. They repaired equipment. They sang songs for their dead. Private passed by, her arm in a sling carrying supplies. She still smiled at him. "Morning." "Good morning, Private. Should you not be resting?" "Resting is for when the work is done." She set down her load, wincing slightly. "Besides, bet me a month's pay I couldn't fix the water purifier before he fixed the power generator. I'm not losing that bet." Legs still in a cast, was indeed working on the generator. He'd propped himself up with makeshift crutches and was elbow-deep in machinery. "You're going to lose," he called out. "I'm almost done." "Keep dreaming." They were laughing. These humans who'd faced death and watched their friends die were laughing over a bet about water purifiers. Made his way to the medical facility. Captain was finally awake, sitting up in bed against strict orders. Sergeant Minyu sat beside him, and they were playing some sort of card game. "You're cheating," said. "Prove it," Minyu replied, grinning. "Captain, may I speak with you?" asked. "Of course," set down his cards, ignoring Minyu's protest. "What's on your mind?" Sat carefully on a supply crate. He'd spent 3 days observing, recording, analyzing. 3 days trying to understand what made humans different. "I have a question. A simple one, but I cannot find the answer in my data." "Ask away." "Why?" Gestured to the compound, to the survivors, to everything. "You knew the probabilities. You knew you would likely die. Most species would have evacuated with the civilians. You had the right to survive, yet you stayed. Why?" Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. There's an old human saying, "It's not about the size of the dog in the fight, it's about the size of the fight in the dog." He smiled at confusion. "It means that will matters more than strength. Heart matters more than numbers." "But you lost 18 people." "We saved 12,000. His voice was firm. 18 deaths for 12,000 lives. The math is easy there. "But those 18 were your people, your friends." "They were, and their sacrifice meant something. It saved families, children, futures." Looked out the window at the colony. In human culture, we have this idea of the good death. Not good because dying is pleasant. Good because it means something, because it saves others, because it stands for something larger than yourself. Your species is willing to die for strangers. Our best examples are, yes. Minyu joined the conversation. "Look, we're not all heroes. Plenty of humans are cowards. Plenty run. Plenty put themselves first. But the ones who don't, the ones who stay and fight." He paused. "Those are the ones who define what humanity can be." Thought about this. About charging into battle despite her fear. About shooting from a collapsing tower. About in his terrible jokes even facing death. About Minyu leading a suicide run to save people he'd never met. "I must return to the Coalition Council," said, "to deliver my report." "What will you tell them?" asked. "The truth, though I am uncertain they will believe it." He found before he left. She was indeed fixing the water purifier, cursing at stubborn bolts. "Private, may I ask you something personal?" "Sure." She didn't stop working. "During the battle I saw your hands shaking. You were terrified, yet you fought anyway. You even volunteered for the suicide mission. How?" Set down her tools and looked at him. Her young face was serious now. "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you're scared and you do it anyway." She picked up her tools again. "My grandfather told me that. He fought in the resource wars back on Earth. He was scared every single day. But he kept showing up, because people needed him. And if you had died in that final charge, then I'd have died doing something that mattered, protecting people, standing with my friends. That's not a bad way to go." She said it so simply, like dying for others was the most natural thing in the world. Left Talos 7 on a Coalition transport. As the planet shrank behind him, he reviewed all his recordings. Days of footage, thousands of data points, and none of it explained the essential truth of what he'd witnessed. The Galactic Coalition Council met in a grand chamber that had seen 10,000 years of deliberations. Representatives from 43 species gathered to hear his assessment of human military capability. "Observer, you have spent time embedded with human military forces," the council speaker began. "What is your evaluation? Should humanity be granted expanded military authority, or should we restrict their combat operations?" Stepped forward. Around him he saw the species of the galaxy. Ancient, wise, powerful, they looked at him expectantly. "I was sent to evaluate human military effectiveness," he began. "I cannot complete this task." Murmurs ran through the chamber. "They operate outside all known parameters. They make decisions that defy logic. They fight battles that mathematics says they cannot win. By every standard measure, they should have been extinct long before they reached the stars." "Then you recommend restrictions?" the speaker asked. "No." Pulled up holographic displays, footage from the battle. "I watched 40 humans hold against 2,000 Ravagers. They should have broken in the first hour. Instead, they fought for 3 days. They lost 18 soldiers. They saved 12,000 civilians." He showed them building impossible explosives, shooting from a collapsing tower, charging into battle, Minyu leading the final assault. Humans do not calculate odds before they fight. They do not consider probability of success. They ask only one question: is this worth fighting for? And if the answer is yes, they fight until they cannot fight anymore. Change the display to show Captain speaking to his troops. Their commander was wounded, bleeding, barely conscious. He continued to lead. When I asked why he did not retreat, he said that retreat would mean abandoning the innocent. This was not acceptable to him. They are reckless, one council member said, dangerous to themselves. They are dangerous to everyone, agreed, but not in the way you think. He showed the footage of the suicide run, 10 humans charging 900 Ravagers. They are dangerous because they do not know how to quit. They are dangerous because they fight for each other with a ferocity that breaks enemy morale. They are dangerous because when you fight humans, you are not fighting for territory or resources. You are fighting against their will, and human will does not break. The chamber was silent now, all eyes on the displays showing humans in battle. I watched a medic who was 22 years old volunteer for a suicide mission to save people she had never met. When I asked her why, she said it was what it meant to be human, to stand between the darkness and the light. Turned off the displays and faced the council directly. You asked if we should fear humans. The answer is yes, not because they are cruel or evil, but because they are unbending. You cannot negotiate with human determination. You cannot calculate it. You cannot predict it. Every model says they should choose survival over sacrifice. They choose sacrifice, every time. He paused, letting his words sink in. 40 humans held against thousands. They knew they would die. They fought anyway. This is what makes them dangerous. This is what makes them valuable. This is what makes them human. The council speaker leaned forward. What is your recommendation, observer? Do not restrict them. Do not limit them. Because if you are ever facing impossible odds, if you ever need someone to hold the line when logic says all is lost, you want humans beside you, because they will not quit. They will not surrender. They will fight until their last breath for people they have never met. Pulled up one final image. The 17 surviving humans of Talos 7, battered and wounded, standing together and smiling. They lost nearly half their number, and they are already rebuilding, already joking, already preparing for the next fight. This is humanity. They do not stay down, and the universe should understand that. The council debated for hours after left the chamber. Some argued for restrictions. Some argued for expanded human military roles. The argument would continue for months. But in a small medical bay on a distant station, taught a song while made fun of them both. Minu cleaned his rifle and told stories about the friends they'd lost. Captain recovered slowly, already planning improvements to the colony's defenses for when they returned. They didn't know they were being discussed by the galactic powers. They didn't care. They had work to do, people to protect, jokes to tell, life to live. Because that's what humans did. They survived, they laughed, they fought for each other. And they never, ever quit. Stood alone in his quarters looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, those 17 humans were rebuilding their colony, singing their songs, honoring their dead. And if the universe was wise, it would remember what 40 humans had done on Talos 7, would remember that mathematics and logic were powerful tools. But human will was stronger. He added one final note to his report. The question is not whether humans can fight. They can. The question is not whether they will fight. They will. The question is, when humanity decides something is worth fighting for, is there any force in the universe that can make them stop? Already knew the answer. No, there was not.